And now we turn to the second question of the national focal point. Okay? So what really is a national focal point? Well, as I have explained, the country parties are the one who drive this process. Now, each country needs to identify to the Secretariat and to the process as a whole, how do we communicate officially with them? And so each country appoints what is called a national focal point institution, which is the country writes to the Secretariat and says, this ministry or that ministry is the body through which we will communicate with you. We therefore then, when we have to send anything official to the country, it is sent directly to that institution. And that is why it's called national focal point, because it is the focal point or the focal position where everything from the country comes to the Secretariat and vice versa. Everything from the Secretariat goes to through the focal point to the country and the entire process. So this is why a national focal point is important, because it is the main channel of communication between the country party and the UNCCD process as a whole, not just the Secretariat. Now, some countries have different types of focal points. Some countries, they give you an institution and they say, well, okay, our Ministry of Lands or Ministry of Agriculture is the focal point. And then they identify concretely a person or persons. And so we come to what I'm talking about, types. Some countries sometimes identify 2 or even 3 focal points. So that some countries, you can see, they have what is called a political focal point. And all political questions are sent, therefore, to that person or to that institution. They also identify what is called a technical focal point. So that technical questions, which does not necessarily have to do with political decisions, are sent there. And then sometimes they also appoint an assistant focal point, so that when the focal point is on leave or is sick or whatever, somebody naturally steps in. So it depends on each country. There are countries, some very small ones, for example, those in the Pacific, for example, they have only 1 national focal point. However, regardless of whether you have 2 or you have 3 or you have a technical and a political focal point, the main task remains the same, which is the focal point becomes the key channel for communication between the country party and the UNCCD process as a whole. Now, focal points basically have many roles in this process. First and foremost at the national level, because they are the ones nationally responsible for the convention process in their country. So they have a number of issues to cover at the national level. First and foremost, of course, is spearheading the implementation process as the national focal point at the national level. However, as you will recall, I said earlier that the UNCCD operates also at the sub-regional, regional, and global level. And here again, at the sub-regional level, the focal points are fundamental, because sub-regionally, for example, the sub-regional institutions which are responsible for desertification or land degradation and drought, they communicate directly through the national focal points. And in most regions, there are what are called sub-regional action programs. These are action programs where country parties agree to work on certain things in common, right, for their overall benefit. Usually it is because it is better that they work like that rather than working individually. In other words, they gain what is called economies of scale in the implementation of the convention. Now, sometimes these sub-regional action programs are designed around common environmental space that these countries share. For example, a river which is the source of water for 2 countries, or for example, an area of land which is shared between 2 countries for particular reasons. So, or for the exchange of information and for the exchange of technology or for the exchange of expertise. But this happens at the sub-regional level. Now you have what is called the regional level. This is the broader issue, and where the entire region then agrees to cooperate on certain issues. So if we can take a concrete example, in Africa, you have what is called the African Union, and this covers the whole of Africa. And therefore, when we talk about the Regional Action Program, this is an action program that covers the whole of Africa. But when we talk about the Sub-Regional Action Program, we can then go to let's say, East Africa. And as you know, in East Africa, there's what is called IGAD, which is a sub-regional organization. And they design their sub-regional action program along the lines of the sub-region. Or we can go to Southern Africa, and we know that there is SADC, which is the Southern African Development Community. And they design a sub-regional action program along the lines of SADC. Okay? Then, globally, now this is important to understand here. The focal points are usually the one who comes to what we call the conference of the parties, as I have earlier described. They're the ones who come there and they negotiate on behalf of their country, on behalf of their sub-region, and on behalf of their region as well. So the national focal points are usually the one who comes to the conference of the parties bearing in their hands, or bearing in their folders, if you want, the positions of their government. And they then come and negotiate with the rest of the world to ensure that the convention is implemented not just globally, but nationally. In other words, they come expressing the national interests of their countries. So what we can see in short here is that the national focal point has responsibilities at all levels. He has responsibilities at national level, which is taking care of the implementation process, generally speaking, at the national level. But he also has to cooperate with the countries of his sub-region in terms of implementing the sub-regional action program, cooperate with the countries of the region as regards the regional action program, and cooperate with the rest of the world as regards the conference of the parties. Now, as I said earlier, this is something important to understand, that the appointment of a national focal point is the responsibility of the government. It is the responsibility of that particular state. And they can appoint a focal point for 3 months, or they can appoint a focal point for as long as they see fit. What is necessary is that there is a particular procedure for this to be done. In other words, it has to come from the relevant government authority. It comes to the Secretariat, to the UNCCD Secretariat, and comes through an official channel, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the Ministry of the Environment, as the case might be, usually the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And even if nationally the focal point is changed, but the government did not send that information to the Secretariat and through the relevant channels, we will not change the focal point at our level, because this is the official way it has to be done. This is in accordance with the rules and procedures. So the long and short of it is this, that the focal point has a responsibility for communication between his country and the UNCCD process. Outside of that, he is key, he is fundamental in ensuring that that sort of process runs effectively, runs efficiently. Without him, there will therefore not be the relevant communication with the UNCCD process, with the Secretariat, with the GM, or with other partners. So therefore, it is very difficult to understate the importance of a national focal point. In closing this question, I want to remind you that these lectures are complementary to your course material. You should read your course material, and you should also read the documents that relate to those course material. One last point. Sometimes a national focal point appointed to the for the UNCCD is also a national focal point for other conventions. Think a little bit as to how much this can be to the advantage of the country, or the other way around, might not be to the advantage of the country. Thank you very much, and see you at the next lecture.